First contact. Chains in the sky. The world stopped the day the sky caught fire. It began with a thunder that rattled windows across continents. Not thunder from the clouds, but from the heavens themselves. Great shadows stretched across the oceans as ships, massive beyond comprehension, descended from orbit. Each vessel was a city of steel, bristling with weapons that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. The Galactic Empire had come. They did not hide their intentions. A transmission flooded every screen, every radio, every network. A voice, cold and commanding, translated into every human tongue. People of Earth, you are subjects of the Eternal Empire. You will submit. You will serve. Resistance is death. For centuries, the Empire had ruled by fear. Hundreds of alien civilizations had already been broken. Species that once filled the stars, now reduced to slaves mining, farming, or fighting for their conquerors. To the Empire, Earth was nothing more than another acquisition, another chain to forge. Admiral Calderon, commander of the fleet assigned to Earth, barely concealed his boredom as he gazed at the blue planet from orbit. In his experience, primitives always fell quickly. A few shows of power, some bombardments, a public execution or two, and the new species would beg for mercy. His officers laughed at the idea of humans resisting for long. But Calderon was not prepared for what came next. On Earth, fear rippled like a storm. Cities fell silent, flights grounded, power grids faltered under the strain of panic. Yet instead of collapsing, governments acted with startling speed. The United Nations called an emergency assembly, streamed live across the globe. The Secretary-General stood before the cameras, her voice steady despite the weight of annihilation overhead. We will not kneel. Humanity will not be slaves. If they want war, then we will give them war. The world erupted, not in despair, but in resolve. Hours later, the Empire sent its first ground forces. Dropships descended into New York, disgorging armored soldiers, towering machines, and banners of imperial conquest. Citizens screamed and scattered, but they did not run far. Police officers drew their sidearms. Soldiers fired javelins and stingers. Civilians armed with hunting rifles and Molotov cocktails joined the fight. It was chaos, uncoordinated, desperate, but it was resistance. And resistance drew blood. One of the Empire's towering walkers collapsed in flames after a stolen fuel truck slammed into it. A squad of Imperial soldiers was cut down when local law enforcement ambushed them from rooftops. Even as skyscrapers burned, the humans did not surrender. From orbit, Admiral Calderon watched the footage with disbelief. His analysts reported unexpected casualties. Primitive aircraft were hurling themselves against drop cruisers, sometimes succeeding. He leaned forward, narrowing his eyes at the humans fighting tooth and nail for every block. They fight like cornered animals, he muttered. This is not what was promised. And on the ground, in the rubble and smoke of New York, a truth had already been forged in fire. Humanity would not go quietly into chains. The Empire had come for slaves. Instead, they had found a species ready to fight. The spark of defiance. The smoke of New York had barely cleared before humanity's answer spread across the world. Where once there had been division, suspicion, and rivalry, the looming shadow of the Empire bound nations together. Leaders who had not spoken in decades now stood side by side. NATO and Russia shared intelligence. China opened its silos to the West. Smaller nations, too often trampled by superpowers, offered their people and their land to the fight. For the first time in history, Earth truly united. Not for profit, not for politics, but for survival. The first victories were small. A squad of Marines in California ambushed an Imperial patrol, seizing plasma rifles and body armor. Engineers at MIT and Beijing tore the weapons apart in makeshift labs, analyzing the energy cores, the alloys, the weaknesses. Within days, crude imitations were rolling out of underground workshops. Humanity was learning, adapting at a speed no alien strategist had ever anticipated. Hackers broke into Imperial comm relays. What was once an entertainment satellite became a weapon, feeding false orders to enemy troops and scrambling their navigation systems. A billion cell phones became spotters, marking troop movements in real time. Farmers welded plows into armored vehicles. Mechanics turned drones into precision strike swarms. Guerrilla war consumed the planet. From the African savanna to the streets of Sao Paulo, ambushes erupted. Imperial convoys vanished in jungle trails. Occupation garrisons found themselves surrounded by civilians who refused to bow. Every attack carried a message. Humanity was not prey. Admiral Calderon, reviewing reports aboard his flagship, felt the first pangs of unease. Other species had broken quickly. Their leaders surrendered. Their people marched to chains. But humans, they were different. Every loss only seemed to harden them. Every battle taught them something new. The tipping point came in Johannesburg. The Empire had established a fortress city there, a central hub to project power across the southern hemisphere. To the strategists of the Empire, it was unassailable. Shields shimmered across the skyline, walkers patrolled the streets, and gunships prowled the skies. But the humans had a weapon the Empire never expected: desperation and ingenuity. A team of scientists and soldiers, working in secret, had retrofitted a cluster of nuclear missiles with stolen alien power cores. They launched the barrage under the cover of a storm. The Imperial fleet scrambled to intercept, but human hackers had already blinded their defenses. The night sky lit brighter than the sun. When the smoke cleared, Johannesburg's fortress was gone, and with it, an Imperial capital ship. For the first time in living memory, a primitive world had destroyed a vessel of the Eternal Empire. The news spread faster than light, not just across Earth, but across the galaxy. On distant mining colonies, enslaved aliens whispered the unthinkable: the humans had won. In the rubble of Johannesburg, battered survivors raised their fists and weapons skyward. What had begun as survival had become something greater. A spark had been lit, and the galaxy was watching. War crossed the stars. The wreckage of Johannesburg had not cooled before humanity looked upward. The war could no longer be fought only on Earth. If the Empire was to be stopped, the fight had to be carried to the stars. From the ruins of captured war machines, engineers worked tirelessly. Plasma cores were stripped, starship hull fragments welded, alien flight controls reverse-engineered. Within months, hangars once built for satellites now housed hybrid ships, ungainly, patchwork vessels powered by human stubbornness as much as alien technology. They were crude, but they flew. The first raids began cautiously. A fleet of 12 human-made ships slipped into orbit around an Imperial outpost on the far side of the moon. The battle was short, brutal, and victorious. The humans returned not only with spoils, but with prisoners, alien slaves, wide-eyed and trembling, who had never seen a species resist the Empire. Those slaves became allies. Across Earth's new fleet, the freed spoke of rebellions smothered, of hope strangled for centuries. But now they saw something new, a people who refused to bow, who fought tooth and nail against impossible odds. To them, humanity was not just another race. They were proof that the Empire could bleed. And so the galaxy began to change. Word of Earth's defiance spread through the slave networks like fire through dry grass. On mining worlds, workers laid down their tools and turned on their overseers. On prison planets, riots erupted that even Imperial shock troops could not contain. Every time a human ship appeared, it was not just an attack, it was a symbol. General Reyes, the battle-hardened soldier who had risen to lead the United Earth Defense, became the voice of that symbol. His broadcast was smuggled across the stars. We are human, we are free, and we fight for all who wish to be free. Not even the Empire could silence him. But the war was not won with speeches alone. Humanity struck at Titan's Gate, a colossal hyperspace hub that linked entire sectors of the Empire. Its defenses dwarfed anything Earth had faced before. Fleets, orbital cannons, entire legions. The battle was chaos. Human pilots flew patched-together ships against cruisers 10 times their size. Freed slaves sabotaged systems from within. Reyes himself commanded from the bridge of the Dauntless, Earth's first true warship. When the gate finally fell, collapsing in a cascade of explosions that shattered Imperial supply lines, The cheers echoed from Earth to the farthest slave world. Millions were freed that day. For the first time, the Empire had lost more than ships. It had lost control. But victories carried a price. Thousands of humans lay dead, ships shattered, Earth's resources stretched thin. And now the galaxy's tyrant could no longer ignore them. In the Imperial throne world, the Emperor rose from his seat, eyes burning with wrath. "Summon the Armada," he commanded. "I will see this Earth broken. Their skies will burn, and their people will know despair." The war had spread to the stars. Now, it was coming home. The war they never wanted. The stars above Earth blazed with fire. The Emperor's Armada had come. Thousands of warships blotting out constellations, more firepower than humanity had ever dreamed possible. From orbit, their weapons lanced down, scorching oceans, tearing craters into continents. Cities shook under the bombardments. Yet the people did not flee. They dug in. They prepared. Humanity had been fighting for years now. Every nation had contributed. Every hand had built. Every mind had adapted. Orbital platforms ringed the planet, bristling with scavenged plasma cannons. Fleets of hybrid warships, patched and scarred, formed a desperate line in the void. On the ground, civilians carried rifles alongside soldiers. Farmers, teachers, engineers, all had become warriors. This was not just a battle. It was survival. The first clash in orbit was a slaughter. Imperial cruisers scythed through Earth's ships, tearing them apart with precision fire. The human line faltered. But instead of retreating, the Dauntless and her sister ships surged forward, ramming, boarding, detonating nukes at point-blank range. Losses were catastrophic, but every sacrifice bought time. On Earth, invasion began. Dropships screamed through the atmosphere, unloading endless waves of Imperial troops. They expected another quick subjugation. Instead, they met resistance in every street. Ambushes erupted in skyscraper ruins, snipers fired from church towers, homemade mines crippled Imperial walkers. Even as buildings fell and millions perished, humanity refused to break. And then, everything changed. Admiral Catheron, long torn between loyalty and conscience, made his choice. As he watched the slaughter unfold, he remembered the spark he had seen in New York, the impossible defiance that had refused to die. With a single command, he turned his fleet's guns on his own armada. Imperial warships erupted under Catheron's betrayal. The humans seized the opening, rallying with renewed fury. For the first time, the Empire's armada wavered. General Reyes led the counterstroke. A strike team boarded the Emperor's flagship, a vessel the size of a continent, gilded in arrogance. Fighting through endless corridors of soldiers and war machines, the humans carved a bloody path to the throne room itself. The Emperor rose to meet them, towering in ceremonial armor, his voice dripping with contempt. "You are nothing," he spat, fleeting sparks in the darkness. "You dare defy eternity." Reyes, battered and bleeding, raised his rifle. "We are humanity, and we are free." The shot rang out, echoing across the chamber. The Emperor fell. Across the galaxy, his death was broadcast by human hackers overriding the flagship's systems. Billions of slaves saw their tyrants end in real time. Chains were cast off. Revolts ignited like wildfire. The eternal empire, built on fear, cracked apart in a single day. When the smoke cleared, Earth still stood. Scarred, blooded, grieving, but unbroken. Humanity had survived the unthinkable, and in doing so, had reshaped the galaxy. No longer the hunted, they had become the torchbearers of freedom. The words of Reyes echoed long after the war. They came seeking slaves. Instead, they found humanity, and humanity gave them war.